Welcome to the fifth and final part of this series on how to use the Siemens DTCO digital tachograph version 1.4. In this session we're going to look at printouts, but to understand printouts we first need to understand pictograms. Pictograms are the symbols used on the screen and on printouts from a digital tachograph. They're designed to be understood in all European states, regardless of the language spoken in that state. Individually, each pictogram has a basic meaning. In sequence, however, they read like hieroglyphics, providing drivers and enforcement officers with clear, simple to understand data. The most common pictograms seen by drivers are period of availability, driving time, break or rest, working or other time, unknown time, and a valid interruption or break. Other common pictograms are printout, tachograph card, card slot 1, card slot 2, demand for data entry, vehicle, daily, and 2 weeks. The most common example of them seen in sequence is the offer to make a printout when the driver card is ejected. In this example, the offer is for a printout of the previous 24 hours worth of data on the driver's card. As we go through the example printout that we're going to use of a driver's card, we'll see other examples of these pictograms in sequence. The tachograph unit can provide various types of printout. These can include printouts of overspeeding by the vehicle, a V-diagram printout which is designed to replicate the display of data found on an analog tachograph chart. The driver can also print the latest faults and events from the unit. More about these a little bit later. The example we'll use for this session is the most common printout, the daily driver activities or the previous 24 hours worth of data on the driver's card. This printout can be split into three sections. The header, which provides basic information about the unit, driver and vehicle. The middle, which provides data on the driver's previous 24 hours of activities. And the end, which displays the most recent historical data of events and faults relating to the vehicle and the driver's card. Let's examine each of these in a bit more detail. The first part of the header displays the date and time in UTC that the printout was made. This series of pictograms tells us the type of printout we're looking at, in this case the previous 24 hours of activity printed from the driver's card. Here we see information relating to the card holder the printout refers to. If there was another card in slot 2, that driver's information would be here too, although no driving information relating to that driver would be on this printout. Here we're looking at the vehicle identification details, and here the unique identification for the tachograph unit itself. Under the workshop pictogram we see the information relating to the most recent calibration of the unit, and under the control card symbol we find the most recent insertion of a card by a control officer, such as the police or VOSA. We're now moving on to the middle section of the printout, the section that directly relates to the card holder's most recent activities. Here we see the beginning of the list of driver activities in order that they happened, including the start date for the activities and the number of times the driver's card has been used in a unit. The unknown time symbol refers to the time that the card was not in a unit, and here we see that the driver began work at this time and the duration was 1 hour and 20 minutes. This tells us that the cardholder's driver card was in slot 1. And here we see the driver began a break, but that it only lasted 2 minutes. As this is below the legal minimum, this period would be added to the driver's working time. The driver then began driving at this time for a duration of 3 hours and 10 minutes. They then began a work period that lasted 29 minutes. This alternation continues until the driver's final activity, which is a work period that lasts for 9 minutes. The driver has then withdrawn their card. Here we see the odometer reading at the time and the distance travelled since the most recent insertion of a card. Unknown time is then recorded as resuming at 1640 as there is no longer a driver card in the unit. This pictogram here stands for total or summary, and here we see a summary of the driver's most recent activities. First we see the beginning time pictograms including the country and odometer reading at the start, and the end time pictograms including the country and odometer reading at the end. Here we see the total accumulated drive time including distance travelled in that time, total working time and periods of availability, and total rest and unknown time. And this crew activities pictogram here tells us the duration of working as part of a crew. In this example the driver was the only one with their card inserted into the unit, so the figure is 0. We then move on to the third and final part of the printout. This pictogram here stands for events and this one for faults. The tachograph card symbol is also here. In sequence, this reads as events and faults recorded on the driver's card. In this example there are none. The next section has the events and faults pictograms too, but the third symbol is now the vehicle pictogram. This reads as events and faults recorded on the vehicle's tachograph unit. The printout will provide at least 5 examples for each section, card and vehicle. In this example we see 4 events, all relating to the power supply to the vehicle. This is the power supply pictogram. This can happen if the vehicle's battery is disconnected, for example. The final event relates to speeding, shown by the overspeeding pictogram here. This figure here refers to what's known as the data record purpose, a code given by the unit to record why the event was logged. This figure here refers to the frequency of that event on the same day in the same unit. This is the date the event happened and the time it began, including the duration of the event. Here we see the identification of the driver card inserted at the time of the fault, and if a co-driver card was inserted at the time of the fault, it would be recorded here too. The last section of the printout is used if a control officer has requested the printout. They record their location here, and their name here, and the driver signs here. Well, that's the end of this session on tachograph printouts. I hope you've enjoyed the session and the whole series, and I hope they've been useful for you. Thanks for watching.